to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who usually do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But again, we are in fourth quarter, no holds barred, no
It's
rules.
no rules November slash mostly October, but there's a little bit in November and
Slash also December.
yeah, like we're off the rails here.
And sometimes Hannah got the flu shot and the COVID vaccine back to back, and she's not doing great. And she's like, "Well, this could go." But everyone get
So I'll be
vaccinated.
doing the plot summary today. Luckily, there's no plot summary.
Laura always picks the very easy times to do a plot summary. But
It's almost like it was
Laura,
planned.
before we do a wrap up of this book and themes and characters, what have you been reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I actually listened to a couple of audiobooks. I listened to a couple of audiobooks recently that I really enjoyed. I wouldn't say they're like fantastic, like everyone go out and read these books, but I did like them. And the first one I listened to was a romantic comedy, maybe, I guess. Not My Type by Evie Mitchell. And this one had a lot going for it. And it was because it features a wheelchair user as the main character, and she is a therapist. She's a sexologist, a psychologist who talks a lot about sex and accessibility with her patients, and she has a podcast, and she's trying to learn more about using ropes and toys in sex. So she reaches out to a person that she went to high school with who teaches a class on this at a local like community college. It was like part of continuing ed, and they end up developing a romance. Things I liked about this book: the mentions of accessibility, that was awesome. The mentions of chronic pain and illness, and how like there's differing sensations that happen with sex, and how it's not always the best to be in certain positions or things like that, depending on how she's feeling, and how just because she doesn't have an orgasm doesn't mean it's not enjoyable, all of that. That was all really interesting. I also like I just thought this was a good book in terms of the representation, honestly. But when it came to like the characters, the couple that we're supposed to be really into, it really fell flat because they did not have very much chemistry.
Okay.
And I'm not someone who's quick to be like, oh, they got together too fast, like that was a whirlwind romance, because I feel like honestly my husband and I, we got together pretty fast and it worked out great. But I kind of think that like this book, it seemed very unbelievable how quickly the couple got together and how we were supposed to believe that they were in love so quickly. And they just didn't have a lot of chemistry. You couldn't figure, or at least I couldn't figure out like what did they like about each other, because it's never really mentioned. And so that was something that just like kind of held me back from loving this book. So there's that. I also think like the spicy sections of the book, really well written, like really well written. But when you get into more of like the deeper romance part of the book, I wasn't really feeling it. And I kind of wish there was a little more depth to the characters, because it seemed like the main character, she was really cool and had all these things going for her, and I couldn't figure out what was like so cool about the male love interest. Like he seemed kind of boring. I couldn't figure it out. I don't know why they were so interested in each other. So yeah, that held me back a little bit. But I do think in terms of like disability representation, accessibility talking points, A plus. The spicy sections, A plus. The romance part, C minus. It had good, where it was good, it was really good, and where it was bad, it was really bad. If that makes sense. So we need more books like this. I think this is a series that the author is going with. So
yeah, I saw it. They're all like yarn and darn it or something. I saw that, and it's like
I think they're all
based in accessibility, so that's good.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, and I kind of just hope that maybe we're jumping to another couple and we're not going to stick with these two, because they're not it for me.
But that's also like you and I have kind of pointed out that the first in a romance series is sometimes not the best.
Yeah.
where it's always kind of the most boring couple to like get you a little bit hooked. Uh and
Hopefully
also
that's the situation here, that people are like, this author is doing a lot of good things, but just picked a wrong couple.
yeah, and I also like, I don't know, I'm always one where I'm like, oh, I'm glad that there's accessibility, and I'm glad it's accessibility that's kind of boring. Like I can't like normalize not
I
making
guess
it the most
so.
perfect book for representation. You know, it's kind of
I
like when
guess
I
people don't
read.
always have to be like the most fantastic people in the world. I guess that's not my point. It's
Oh no,
more
I don't think it's your
like
point at
they
all.
they have zero chemistry, Hannah. Like I don't consider myself to be like that like amazing person that is like super interesting in all this, but I really think that in this book I can't figure out like why they like each other. Like they don't make sense, and it seems so rushed, the romance.
Yeah, that's definitely how I felt in a lot of the first books that I've ever read in a series where I'm
Hmm.
like, why am I reading this couple? I don't care that much. And that was, I
Yeah.
loved the Plus One series. That was part of a series and it's like the third book in a romance. And then I like looked back at the earlier ones and I read the plot descriptions on two of them and I was like, oh, I really want to read the second one. And I read the first one and I'm like, yeah, it looks fine.
You
And the
totally
author,
lost interest.
yeah, I was just like, I don't really need to read that first one. They're a couple, they love each other good enough, I guess. Like,
Amazing.
I have not read either the second one, but like Maisie Eddings is coming out with a new book next year, and NetGalley reached out. They're like, "Hey, you really love the Plus One. Like, do you want this book?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take it." And I'm like, "Ooh, she's writing like a good gay romance." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm never going back to that first book. It seems like she's doing much more interesting stuff as she moves along in her
She's
life."
moved on, and so have
Yeah.
I.
So sometimes I think the first book can be a little bit of a dud. So I wonder if like the next ones will be a little bit
Well,
better.
and it's disappointing to me, I guess, because it was like the author really got the sex sections down, and the points that I think needed to be made about being a wheelchair user and being someone who is in an interabled relationship. I think all of these points were hit upon in
Hmm.
the way that they should have been. So that's why it's somewhat disappointing where it was like this romance doesn't make me care about them. Like
Yeah.
it's just very blah, and I just didn't like it.
This just reminds me of like all the I remember I read so many Nora Roberts romances, and the first one's always like the couple is the sweet blonde girl and the sheriff of the town, and that's always the first in the trilogy. And then the second one is like it's the hothead and the man who's going to tame her. And then the third one is always like, look, it's two people who fucked up their first time and they get a second chance. And those are usually the tropes. So you just had to go through like the first, like the blonde lady and
Well,
the nice man fall in love.
and in this one, there's always like the big miscommunication in the third
Oh,
act.
of course.
This one does not make sense at all. Like it's just like I don't understand. Like the way that it happens, it's like if anything, this should have happened in reverse. The
Yeah.
communication, like the miscommunication, it just I was like, no, why
Oh.
are things happening the way they're happening in this story?
I mean, I everyone knows I'm a huge believer in Beach Read as a book, but
Hmm.
that third act miscommunication always killed me. Where I was like,
Ugh,
"Honey, he deserves a minute to talk to his ex-wife. Like, give him a minute."
yeah.
Like, sorry
I
for
mean,
spoilers for Beach Read, but like, there's always that moment where you're just like, this miscommunication just needed a conversation, and you didn't give them an opportunity to do so.
not that a lot of people are gonna that listen to this podcast are probably reading Not My Type. If you are, skip ahead a minute. But
Okay.
there's an ex that comes into the picture, and the ex ends up being connected to the main female character through their work and ends
Mhm.
up basically publicly humiliating the male love interest.
Oh,
And then
geez.
he takes it as like he starts like running away from the female love interest and is like, she's probably hates me. I'm unlovable. And it's like, why would what would make you think that would have been the situation? This former act or this former girlfriend of yours was being a literal bee in
Yeah.
front of a group of people. Why would she think you're a bad person? Like, I don't know. It was just very hard to follow the trains of thought at this point in the book because
Okay.
things were getting weird.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But they got back together and they were in love.
Shocking. Laura, spoilers.
They were in love. It all worked out.
Spoiler. Oh, good.
So the other audiobook that I listened to, I actually enjoyed a lot more. It's We Set the Dark on Fire, which is the first in a series called We Set the Dark on Fire. The author is Tehlor Mejia, and it's labeled as a fantasy, but I'm not really sure why it's labeled as a fantasy unless it's because it's kind of almost like a dystopian society and they have mentions of gods in this.
Okay.
But like at the beginning of the book, we are told that like way back when there was like these two, or I guess there was a god, and he was given these two goddesses to be his wives. And one was his primera, who was like the smart one that would help him make decisions and do all these things and all this. And then there was the segunda, who was basically the pretty one that was like, this
Always.
one's the this one's the baby maker.
Oh,
And
good.
so within this culture, they've basically started kind of training young girls to end up to be primeras and segundas for families within the community. And so then there's a ceremony where wealthy families will bid to get better segundas and primeras for their sons, and they all end up in this situation where they're married in an arranged marriage, and there's a
Okay.
primera and a segunda and then the husband.
Okay.
So there's also like a immigration background story that we're getting in
Mm-hmm.
this too. And the main character that we are following is not originally from the country that we are in. They are an
Okay.
immigrant. She's an immigrant and she is undocumented. Like she is not supposed to be at this school. It's very much a secret and it's like a whole thing that she's trying to cover up. And her family, even like coming here and getting her into this school was a huge deal. So it's very much a thing that she's worked really hard and ends up becoming this primera for like the most wanted family in the community. And she ends up being his primera, his wife. And of course, the segunda in the relationship is her rival at school,
Of course.
who is like super hot and also terrible.
Super
And
hot.
it's mentioned all the time, like her plunging cleavage and everything. So it's super hot rival that is the Segunda now. And so they're going to be interacting together all the time. And it's kind of like, oh, well, this sucks. And then there's also this whole like storyline within like the immigration thing that we're trying to get some liberation for the people of the community that are undocumented, and they're trying to get racial justice to occur. And
Mm.
so there's all that, but it ends up like the primera and the segunda, they grow fond of each other and start to develop a relationship. And then we find out that there's some secrets and some things going on that we didn't expect.
Oh.
But this is a book and it's YA. And I think because it's YA, it's holding back a little bit. The author maybe
Okay.
held back. But my thoughts on this were where it was really good. I'm not going to say where it was good. It was good, but uh it was a really good book, but I almost like wanted to take it up a couple notches in like all of the sections that I enjoyed.
Mm.
Like all of the like secretive, like secret organization going on, all of the like immigration story, all of the romance because it's queer romance, all of the mentions of the gods and goddesses. I wanted to like get more of everything and make it more
Yeah.
intense. And
Right.
it was just kind of like it was enough to keep you interested, but then it stopped. And I kind of
Mm-hmm.
wish it was just like, let's dial this up a lot because if we're having like a riot in this situation, let's make it huge. Don't just like make it 2 pages and it's done. And it's like, oh, well, that was no big deal. I think I expect too much from YA sometimes and I forget like
This is for children.
this is for children. And high school you would have loved this, Laura, but
Right.
adult you needs to go read an adult book, I guess.
Well, also, you have to remember that, like, you're coming down from Laura, like, guys, for the podcast, like if you're not following Laura on Bookstagram, go follow her. But you're coming down from reading like one of the most epic trilogies you've ever read that you loved so much. So maybe
Yeah.
also you're probably being a little bit hard on this book because it's
I
like,
I
oh yeah, I
probably
read this
definitely
beautiful
am.
adult book. Like I read this beautiful,
I
perfect
mean,
adult book, and then I read a YA, and it's like, well, why isn't this the same? And it's like,
I
well,
gave it
because.
I gave it 4.25 on
Oh, good.
Storygraph. So I'm not rating it badly. I
No.
just I think it's just me wanting more intense things to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
fair.
I it just didn't get as intense as I wanted it to. It was just like I really just wanted to turn up the volume on all of it. And I
That's
think the
fair.
author could definitely do it. She's
Yeah.
got the chops.
She's you can do this. But Laura believes in you, okay?
She's listening right now. Tehlor K. Mejia, thanks for listening. Please
Please give
give
us
us
5 stars.
more of everything.
Give us 5 stars and more. Thank
You
you
know,
so
I
much.
might actually listen to the next book because I'm just curious, like, what happens next. And if, like, once, because I feel like sometimes in the first book, authors maybe do get a little bit held back
Mm-hmm.
where either their editors or whoever are telling them, like, rein it in a little bit. We don't want to do that or go down that lane. And I kind of wonder if maybe in the second book, there's a little more leeway
Yeah, I
that
think that that's definitely true.
can be explored, you know? So
Yeah,
I'm definitely curious about that. And I think I'm gonna listen to the next one. And
I
the
think you should.
audiobook narrator was really good.
Oh,
So
good.
if you're looking for a YA, I'd definitely check it out. But I don't know if I would call it fantasy because I haven't picked up on any magic of sorts, just maybe a
Okay,
couple of mentions of goddesses, and maybe this is considered like a dystopian society.
interesting. Okay, good to know.
But yes, Hannah, the other thing that I was going to mention, I will not talk about it a lot because I
We're
think
gonna
people
do
just
it for
need
the podcast.
to read the book. We're scrapping everything.
No.
We're just gonna cover this trilogy. I'm reading the Broken Earth trilogy. I'm in the Stone Sky at the moment, and I have finished the Obelisk Gate. So the Obelisk Gate is the second book in the trilogy, and we're still getting multiple POV. We're learning a little more about some of the different things that we got in the first book that maybe weren't touched upon enough. And I really appreciate that because I was kind of like, what are these things? I need to know more about them. So we're getting that. I will say the pace is slower, but
Okay.
I don't think it's like slow enough that I would say, oh, this book is boring. Like, definitely not. This
Right.
book is definitely excellent. And I think that even the change of pace was warranted. And it's an awesome book. And I just really love this trilogy.
Good. That's good to know.
So we're scrapping everything for next year.
We're gonna just do this.
We're just gonna do chapter by chapter of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and that's
what we
what's happening.
promised to never do for all the other books we've done, where we're like we couldn't do a chapter by chapter
We
breakdown.
could do chapter by chapter for this trilogy.
I'm sure we
There's not that
could.
many chapters, honestly. I think there's maybe less than 20 per book.
Okay.
So they're fairly long chapters, but I think there's just so much within all of them that
Yeah.
we could easily do chapter by
Hey
chapter.
guys, when we're ready to start doing a chapter by chapter breakdown, look for us there.
Catch us in 2027.
Yeah,
We're
pretty much.
still covering the Broken Earth trilogy.
Yes.
But no, it's awesome. People, please check it out. You will not regret it.
Good.
And I don't know if I would say that it's put a damper on like the other books that I'm reading. I don't think that's true, but I think right now, like the books that I'm reading, it's like when you enjoy one book that you're reading, you kind of start to enjoy a bunch of the other ones you're reading. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that like generally I feel like I rate fairly high, but I feel like I'm in like a quote unquote good book mood. So I'm being a little more generous even with some of the books that I'm reading where like a couple of them those couple that I read on audio, I was like, oh, they were really good.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like I was in a bad mood if I would have DNF'd or if I would have even just been like, man, these are not as good. So sometimes if you're reading a good book, I feel like your mood or surrounding other books does improve. And I think that's my situation right now.
I think that's always like a good reminder for everyone that like reviews are a moment in time and it's very hard to like find that moment again. Like you're never the same person when you're reading it again. So
that's why I saw one of these things. People are always like, oh, or on Bookstagram, there's always these things where you can choose what scenario you want to happen. And it's like, would you rather get free books for a lifetime, or would you rather be able to read your favorite books again for the first time? And it's like, oh, that's a really hard decision.
Right. I
Because
know.
sometimes I just enjoy a reread because I can think back to like how I felt in that moment and the first time, and then I can reflect on like how it makes me feel now. And I really
Mhm.
like that experience too. But at the same time, there's something about that first read where, especially if it's a book that really made me emotional, that I'm like, oh, I
I
wish I could have
know.
that feeling again. The other thing I've been enjoying is like documentaries on Netflix and Disney Plus.
Yeah, you've been on a
And
documentary kick.
yeah, I watched Chimp Empire, and it's only 4 episodes. If you like nature documentaries, I think that it's a really good one. It follows the Ngogo chimps in
Hmm.
Africa, and it's got some sad moments, but I think it's definitely one where it's like we need to maybe show some more of these different groups of animals more than we do,
Yeah.
just so people start to care about them a little more. And I also watched like I've been watching this series on elephants on Disney Plus. It's one of those Nat Geo ones, and that one is heartbreaking to me because I really love elephants. So
Oh,
there's like things that happen within this series where I'm like, no, why did they show that?
you do love elephants a lot. I do know this
I
about
they're
Laura.
probably my favorite like wild
Yeah.
animal.
Laura loves an elephant, guys. You
Yeah,
don't
I have a lot of
understand.
elephant stuff actually,
Yes, she does.
but
Um,
I love elephants, and I think some of these like Nat Geo shows on Disney Plus are pretty good if you're into nature and checking out some of those things. Some of them are a little bit older, so I tend to lean into the ones that are more recent.
mhm.
Like they've got to be 2018 or newer for me to
Oh my
watch them
gosh,
because stuff
this
changes a
is
lot.
this is such a funny moment because people who don't know, my aunt and uncle who I lived with during law school are slowly moving out of their house. So like I've been going back in there. My uncle was a science teacher, so he has like a lot of sciencey books. And I found some like older books. One of my roommates is very into science, so I found a book on like wild asparagus that he
Huh.
had, and I was like, oh, could I have this? Like, I think my roommate would love this, and I gave it to her. And then my fiance was like, or no, it wasn't my fiance. My aunt was like, "Well, why would you want to read that? It's outdated." And we're like, "The book on wild asparagus is outdated. Like, what is outdated? Like, I'm
I
sure
mean, you don't
it's
know what kind of
fine.
research they've been doing on it.
That's fair, but like, you could
And when
still
we talk
enjoy the."
wild asparagus, are you talking just like the stuff that grows in ditches that people
Yeah,
find and is just like
well,
how
I
to
don't know.
harvest it?
I'm not gonna read it, but it's like on like wild asparagus, how to find it, like what's it all about, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And so I was just like, I think she'll be fine.
that's so funny.
So you saying like, well, I want them to be more recent documentaries because things change. I'm like, well, sometimes finding wild asparagus is just fine any time of the year. So
Yeah. I maybe give a little more leeway to certain productions or certain like I don't know. I kind of think that the reason I want to see more recent documentaries is just because like with the way that our world is going and like deforestation and climate change and everything and poaching, like things do sadly change quickly for a lot of these animal populations. So I kind of want to have this is maybe morbid, a more updated like what's going on with them in case it's like, oh, you watched this documentary from 2001 and things are not like that anymore.
right. That's fair.
So I want the more updated take.
That's fair.
But Hannah, what have you been reading and watching and or enjoying?
So I've been slowly making my way through a 500-page book, The Witch Elm by Tana French. I am about 66% of the way through. Last night I did look up who the murderer was. It's a murder mystery, and
Hannah, why would
I
you spoil
because
it?
because I really wanted to go to bed and I was sick and I my arm hurt and I was like I just kind of I didn't really want to look up what it's sometimes when you're reading a book, like especially with this book, The Witch Elm, it's very, very psychological. And sometimes I feel like books like that, it's better if you kind of know what the twist is going to be, because then you can watch it play out in front of you and you can like pick up on things a little bit more. And I like I like seeing like what's going on in this scene. And so there was something going on where I was just like, I kind of need to know how this is all going to play out, and I'm curious. And once I knew, I was like, oh, okay, I get what Tana French is like setting up, and I was very interested to see that. And it's just such a long book. Like I've been reading it for like 2 weeks now. So it's just a little bit harder to pick up and like read when you're just walking around. Like you kind of just need to sit with it. Um, and I love the Dublin Murder Squad books. This book is not great in my like I think it's still very good. It's still going to get like 4 stars, but like compared to her other works, I feel like Tana French is someone who likes to talk about hard topics in her murder mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, she's kind of trying to do a take on the like happy-go-lucky guy who's incredibly privileged and then gets thrown into like the real world. So like a whole part of this book is there's a guy named Toby. He has a pretty great life. He's kind of not the greatest person, but he knows it. But overall, he's a good person. And then two burglars break into his apartment and they beat him and leave him for dead. And then he's like struggling to recover, and he ends up like living with one of his uncles who's has like brain cancer at the time. And then there is a skull that is found in the on the uncle's property, and it's kind of like discovering who it is, what happened, all this stuff. Um, and like a huge part of this is like Toby is kind of an asshole throughout this whole book, and you kind of realize like he never was watching what was happening around him. But
Okay.
like it's incredibly frustrating because as you're reading it, he never seems to like learn his lesson.
Mm.
Like there's like parts where like one of his cousins is being very vulnerable with him. And then in the next moment, he's like, well, it probably wasn't that bad. She's such a social justice warrior. And so I think like Tana French wants to look at that kind of character, but it's very frustrating
Mm-hmm.
to be in his head for 500 pages and see what's like kind of happening to him or around him for 500 pages. So like
Sure.
it's a little bit of a difficult read sometimes. And I'm not sure how I feel about it overall. And I kind of knew what the killer was going to be the entire time, so I was not shocked by the end of it. I was just kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I don't think that that's the main mystery. I think it's like this, you're in this guy's head and you don't really know what happened to him. He's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
telling you the past and doing all this stuff. Um, so it's very atmospheric. I think a lot of people like did not give this book the best ratings because two of her most recent books, the Searcher, I think is the other one that's a one-off for her, and this book are both kind of behemoths. Like
Mm.
people were kind of like, oh, I mean, she's a Dublin writer. They're Dublin murder mysteries, so like I'm a fan. But like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people kind of are like, hey, you were really good at giving us books that were not 500 pages too. Like
So why the change?
why the change? Why are you doing this? And those are her two most recent ones. And then The Searcher is like that one's going to be her new series following a retired detective. So like, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a chunker. Like it's 450 pages. The Trespasser was also very long, which is one of her Dublin Murder Squad books. And I think like sometimes what I loved about the Dublin Murder Squad was it was a little bit more episodic, where it was like
Mm-hmm.
you followed a detective that you met in the previous books, which was fun because it just added different layers where it was like, oh yeah, I
Sure.
remember them from the last book, and then you're with them in this book and you get to see their movements and their beliefs and all that stuff. So that was interesting, but I just kind of wish the book were a scotch shorter, although she is a beautiful writer and she is really good at what she does. um I just it's dragging along, Tana, and I need to read another book soon. uh and then I did also, we talked about this last week, but I did finish the interview with the vampire.
Oh, okay.
And I really enjoyed that book. I listened to the audio version of that book. I think I would want to do a reread of it. Um because it's fascinating. I really liked this. I thought it was like very I could see why a lot of people think it's a classic. Um it's Anne Rice like is a very interesting writer. She does a really great job of like, again, you and I talked about this in the last one, where like you have this awful 5-year-old vampire and she just keeps screaming at everyone like, I didn't want to be a vampire, and it's like she has a point, she is a
Oh,
5-year-old. Like
poor 5-year-old.
that poor 5-year-old. And like even in like all the movies about this, they have to age the 5-year-old up because they're like, yeah, it's pretty bad she's a 5-year-old.
Mm.
Like And I think some people get freaked out by these books because like she does write like Louis, who's the main character in this book, does like often call Claudia the 5-year-old like his lover, but he never means
Uh-huh.
it like that. He means like romantic, like non-sexual romance, you know. Um and I liked what she did with like the different characters. Louis has a very tumultuous relationship with the vampire who created him, Lestat. Um and Lestat is like kind of pure evil, pure like ego becoming a vampire. So it's like interesting to
Hmm.
watch him and kind of like the ups and downs of their relationship. I also thought the ending was really well done. I kind of wasn't expecting like a certain section of it to go the way it did. Um and yeah, I really liked these books. I didn't think I was going to. I kind of was like, oh, I'm just curious because I knew like there's stuff going like everyone always talks about the Interview
Hmm.
with the Vampire series, and I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. And I probably will continue on with it if I can get audiobooks
Ooh,
because I don't know if I want to like read them because they're
sure.
also very big. But like the next one is the Vampire Lestat, who was kind of the antagonist in the previous book. So
Hmm.
it's interesting to like kind of see how Anne Rice like builds vampires who aren't nice. Like I feel like we kind of a lot of people always talk about vampires. It's like, oh, look, they're trying so hard to be good. They're trying so hard to be this. And like, Anne Rice is kind of like, yeah, but a bunch of them are kind of dicks. Like,
I mean, yeah. I
yeah.
feel like
So,
people romanticize vampires a little too much, and it's like, let's take a step back here. Like,
mhm,
vampires are trying to eat and put like possess humans
mhm.
for their familiars, so they're not always like the most moral of beings.
Right. And so she definitely has like a very interesting take on vampires. She's also just a very prolific writer. Like she wrote a lot of books. So
Cool.
I'm sure that there's something bad about her just based on the
Oh
time
no.
period she was writing in. I don't know. I have no idea. But she yeah, so it's interesting. She also wrote under a pseudonym so she could write adult themed erotica, which
Oh gosh.
I find funny. So yeah, it was a ton of fun. I liked the book. I don't know if I'll read all of them because there are
Mhm.
13 books in the
Oh my
Vampire
gosh.
Chronicles. Could you imagine you and I doing those
You
books?
just said a little bit ago that you were probably going to continue with
I
it, so
am gonna
I
continue, but like I probably will read like two or three. I probably will not
okay.
read like 13 to 14.
What if you get like so hooked on it and you're just like, these vampire books are my favorite thing in the world?
Here's the thing. I'm almost positive these books probably go off the deep end just looking at the ratings on Goodreads.
Oh no.
Because like the first, like Anne Rice, the Interview with the Vampire, Vampire Lestat, all 4.10, 4.02. Then Queen of the Dam is like 3.9. And then by book four, we're at a 3.75 rating,
It's still pretty good.
3.7. Yeah. And then we do have a 3.9 around book eight, but then it's
Mm,
like 3.88, 3.73. I guess they're all like pretty clear, but I feel like,
I think that's pretty good.
yeah, but I feel like when you have a book that's like this timeless and it's still hanging at like a below four range, I'm always like, what's going on there? Like
I
something's
don't know. I think
probably
you'd
not
be
great.
surprised
That's fair. I don't know.
because I feel like
Unless
look up like The Great Gatsby. Like, what's that one got for Goodreads ratings? Because sometimes I feel like classics are all over the board.
that's fair. But I mean, and also people
And
just
for
stop
various
reading.
reasons too, because like
Yeah, it's at
sometimes you see like
3.93.
sometimes you see reviews of certain classics and some of the reviews are like, I didn't understand this one, 2 stars. And it's like, okay, well, it's Shakespeare, so obviously it's a little more difficult to pick up on what's being said. So
Yeah.
let's maybe it's a you problem.
I mean, by the time we get to book 13, there's only like 5,000 ratings compared to the earlier ones, which have
People
like
really drop off.
people really drop off. The first one has 500,000 ratings on Goodreads compared to 5,000. So
Yeah.
I
It's
do think,
probably also a situation where people are like you saying like, I'm willing to dedicate time to a few of this series, but
but
not
like,
the entire thing.
well, and that's like, I was recently listening to a podcast that was about Melrose Place, which is
Hmm.
the offshoot of 90210 because 90210 was based in high school and they couldn't they couldn't do certain topics with high schoolers that they could do
Hmm.
with like adults. So they had Melrose Place as like the adult version of that. And like they were like, the show is wild. If you look at it, the show is wild. And I'm like, I feel like I'm getting that kind of theme from
Sure.
all of these Anne Rice books where it's like, at some point you kind of lose the thread.
Sure.
So I might listen to all 13 if I could get to them. If I could find audiobooks for free for all 13, I might listen to them and be like, you're never gonna guess what happens in book 10.
Oh gosh. I would love those
uh,
updates, honestly. Because I'd probably never read those. Vampires aren't really
yeah.
my thing, honestly.
Were you ever into like a vampire mood when you were in high
No.
school? Okay,
I
because I
read
definitely,
Twilight and it just kind of was like because it was the thing. Everybody had to read it, I guess. I don't know. I was very much like I think you and I have talked about this multiple times about how like everyone was reading Twilight, so we were like, we like it. And it was like, no, we don't really like it. And I feel like that kind of I don't know that I ever really said I liked it even. It was just like everyone was reading it, so I had to read it too. And I just never have been big on vampires.
yeah, I liked vampires, but I was never as much in like I definitely did the Twilight books and didn't enjoy them, but I was more
Hmm.
into like there are certain ones like there were books called Blue Bloods by Melissa de la Cruz. And then there was like Marked. And then I also read the Vampire Diaries before the TV series
Hmm.
came out. Boy, are those books nothing like the TV show. It
Oh,
is
really? Oh, geez.
wild how different. Like the from the first episode, you're like, this is not what I read.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really into vampires, I don't think. I
But
I did watch some of True Blood, the
mm,
TV show
yeah,
that used to be on HBO. Um, but then I gave up on that.
yeah, I gave up
So
pretty quick like that. Oh, I
I
remember. Yeah, I
like
read a lot
Sookie
of
Stackhouse or whatever her name is. I'm not really big on that show, but
yeah, I read
I'm
a
just
lot
not a
of the
vampire
house.
fan.
I read a lot of like random series one-offs, but I also think I was more into magical realism versus vampires. Like I think it was like interesting because I was like, oh, I like the magical realism stuff,
Hmm.
but I um wasn't as into like it wasn't because it was vampires. It was just lots of vampire novels were getting
Hmm.
published around our age because of the Twilight craze.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
think I've always
yeah,
kind of been a lit fic girly because some of the books that I really loved in high school were lit fics. So I think I've always
that's
just kind of
fair.
been like this book will crush your soul and it's pretty realistic. So that's kind of my thing. Hannah, I did notice though, you mentioned like feeling kind of weird about the situation you're in with your reading, but something that stood out to me is that it seems like you're getting a little more time to sit with the books that you're reading instead of just like flying through, pumping them out. And
Yeah.
I kind of love that for you because I feel like you don't get that opportunity a lot.
I know I'm usually like someone who I'm like, well, that one's done, now on to the next one. Oh, that
Yeah.
one's done, on to the next one. But this right now, I've like been so busy that I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm sitting with this like witch elm book for 2 weeks and it's going to be fine. And like, I also laugh at myself because I'm like, oh, I'm in such a reading slump. And it's like, yeah, you've read 8 books in October. I think you're
Yeah,
fine.
that's
Like,
not a reading slump.
no, I think lots of people would be shocked by that amount of stuff.
You've read like over 100 books this year already, and it's October. So
I know, but my
it,
goal was 130. So,
I think you'll be fine. I think you'll do it.
but yeah,
But I
so.
just kind of I kind of love that for you that you're able to sit with even if it feels weird to you. I think it's kind of nice every now and then to just be able to sit with some books and not feel like you're rushed to read them.
Yeah, and I've definitely been like I've been more down to like just pick up a book and read a couple pages here and there and be like, oh, I kind of forgot what was happening. I guess I'll turn a few pages back and reread what just happened and like keep it
Hmm.
straight in my head. So that's been nice. Um, but yeah, the interview with the vampire was fun because I was always reading it on the way to work. Um, and like, yeah, I've gotten to read some shorter books and some like fun books, but I'm also probably being hard on myself because I have to return like all the books I grabbed from the library recently because Milwaukee only lets you do 3 renewals before you have to return them, and that's just really rude because I used to live in Chicago where it didn't matter.
Oh, how does the Milwaukee like fine system work? Do they have fines?
Yeah, they have fines. So now
Okay.
I've already had to pay like $1 in fine. Although one day I went to pay fines and they were like, well, we don't shut off your account until you get $5 in fines. So do you want to just wait? And I was like, I'll just pay the dollar now.
Hmm. Yeah.
I have the dollar. Just give me money back. Like it's
Right.
fine. Um, So yeah, they do have where you get
I'm always
charged,
kind of
but
curious what different like library systems like policies are because I know a lot of libraries in Illinois, even like the rural ones, are starting to go, excuse me, they are starting to go with a fine-free
hmm
policy. And I really like that. And
same.
like my library that I've been using lately, they're fine-free. And I think their system is basically like if you haven't returned the book after 3 weeks when it was due, then they send you a letter saying like,
Oh,
"Hey, you need to return this," and then they put a hold on your account,
yeah.
and then it's like you just have to return the book, and then they lift the hold immediately. So it's
Yeah.
kind of just like, okay, not a big deal.
And I prefer that. I feel like that's like a good system to have for libraries because it incentivizes returns. Like when
Yeah.
Chicago switched to no fines, they had like thousands of books returned and people started using the library again because they were like, "Oh, I get to just return this and like no shame, nothing. I just get to continue to use my library card." And like I always return the books like within, I mean, like sometimes it might be like 4 days before I return the book on time, but I was always pretty careful about like, oh, I'm gonna go return this because like it is due and I'm not able to renew it. Because Chicago's was really nice because they just automatically renewed unless it was
Mm.
held somewhere else. So it was like unlimited, or you got to like keep a book for about a year before you had to return it, as long
Wow.
as no one else wanted the book.
As long as there wasn't like somebody else looking for it.
Yes. And so that's nice because, like, oh, you just got to keep books. Like, when I moved
Hmm.
here, I still went to the library sometimes and grabbed books while I was in Chicago because I was like, well, I can just keep these
Hmm.
until I go back home.
That's a really nice policy, actually. I didn't know that it was like that, that it just like automatically renewed. Like my
hmm
local library, you have to renew it yourself. They have like a call-in system, which is
Mm,
super simple. They don't renew it automatically for you, and when it hits your due date that needs to be returned, then you obviously have to return it.
right.
But the other
Yeah.
thing I don't quite understand is like what's stopping somebody from returning it and then like the next day coming in and checking it out again. Like
I don't think anything's stopping them from
I,
that
I
besides
that's
like
what I
it
don't
takes
understand
time.
about some of these things where it's just like, why not have all of the libraries have that policy where it's just like if nobody wants it, just keep renewing it.
Right. I don't know. And I get it because I guess like you don't want nothing on the shelves, like where
Hmm.
like you want people returning it so people get to like
So
scan
yeah, people
through
can
and look at
scope
stuff.
things out and see it
Yeah.
as they're browsing.
But like I don't know, I still like having no fine system and an automatic renewal as long as you're
Yeah.
not like abusing it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I also think that you're absolutely right that it's a thing where people will not. You obviously said they've done studies on this, but people will not return a book if they think like, oh, I've got $4,000 in fines
Right. Like
versus like, I'll just keep it and I'm never going back.
yeah, like that's what happens is people get really anxious and they don't know what
Hmm.
to do and they're like, I guess I this is just my normal and I'll never go back and it'll just like I feel like people don't understand what shame does to a human being.
I mean, I get really nervous. Like I
Yeah.
don't, I try really hard to get books either renewed or returned on the due date. And like the book that I had checked out from the library most recently that I returned, I was a couple days late and it was basically because I was just like, I cannot get to the library today. I was too busy with
Mm.
stuff going on. And they like I went in and the librarians, they did not make a big deal about it at all.
No.
But for whatever reason, like me going in there, I was like all nervous. Like they were going to be like, thank God you brought this back. We've been waiting for it. It was just like, no questions asked. Just put the book in there. You're 2 days late. Who cares?
Right? It doesn't matter that much. And that's the thing is like I feel like well, there are people in the world who I've had such a weird experience lately because like I switched jobs and I am very happy I switched jobs. But like the world, like a job is just a job. Like as long as something is under my job purview, why do I have a problem with doing it? Where some people will be like, ah, we have to do this every single time someone does this. And I'm like, yeah, that's just a task you have to do for your job. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
that big of a deal. And I think like everyone's expecting people to go off the handle when they like I think people expect that kind of energy where it's like, oh my gosh, I
Mm-hmm.
have to do my job. And it's like, well, yeah, some people are like that, but the majority of people are fine and they're not
Mm-hmm.
thinking about you at all. And so it's okay.
I definitely think it's just something about like deadlines and like the fear of getting in trouble
Mhm.
that some people very much respond to that
Yeah,
and get like very afraid. And I think that it's more people than we want to believe because
right.
obviously when they lifted the fines, they returned all the library books.
Exactly. And that's, I just think people don't give everyone enough grace to be like, oh, yeah, of course it's overwhelming. And like, I get overwhelmed and I push off doctor's appointments and things that would help me.
Hmm.
And like, I don't ask for help when I need it. And like, it's not that big of a deal. It's just like, that's just a human reaction.
Hmm.
Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I do think a no fine system is the best way to go.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I haven't been watching very much, but I have been listening to a tons of podcasts. So um some highlights. I've been like listening to 1 year, which is a fun Slate podcast where each year they do or they focus on like 1 year and random things that happened during it. So
Okay.
they've done like 1986, 1942, and 1955. um and it's just a ton of fun. It's like a weird moments in history which I vibe with. And I liked doing that. I learned like we learned some stuff about like I learned about the polio vaccine. Like that
Hmm.
was very interesting in context of like nowadays with the
Hmm.
backlash of the vaccines and everything. Because like obviously it's not the first time they had to roll out vaccines for
Yeah.
people, and the polio vaccine was like started with children, and there was like a little bit of backlash because some children had negative effects. And they figured out it was because like facilities weren't standardized in how they had to make the drug. They were rushing it.
Hmm.
And so like that led to safer quality moving forward because it's happened in the past. And that was really interesting.
My grandma
There's
actually
also
talks about like getting the polio vaccine, like because my grandma had polio when she was a child, and I don't know for sure, but I think she still kind of walks strangely because of it. But she uh, has talked many times about like how they would have or they had to go to just like a big gym, like the high
hmm
school gym, and there was just like a huge line of people, and it was like on a sugar cube or something like that, that it was
yeah,
an oral vaccine.
that's so strange. Yeah. And so like this year you learned about that. You learned about a team of black little leaguers who like decided to play in the little league, and all the teams forfeited instead of playing with them, and they like won the little league series because of it. And they were like, yeah, we would have rather played people.
Right.
um and you learned about like the Crockett craze, which was interesting. And then weather girls, like weather girls were a big huge phenomenon in the
Uh-huh.
1950s. And it was
Was
like
this like
pretty
58,
55.
55?
um
Okay.
and then there was also about like how there was like a communist theory that happened in Alaska in 1955 where like they just wanted a mental health facility and it like all got out of control. So it's just like interesting random facts like that teach you
Yeah.
like, wow, history just does kind of repeat itself because
Hmm.
people have too much time on their hands at all
Hmm.
times. So I enjoyed that season very much. People should go check it out.
So they just
Um
follow 1 year, and each episode is like a different topic within that year.
yeah, so there's been
Okay. I
five
like that.
seasons. Yeah, so there's been 5 seasons, so 5 different years. And I listened to it because I got into Slow Burn, which is about like political. The first couple seasons were all about the impeachments.
Hmm.
And so like season one was the impeachment of oh my gosh, I'm blanking. I believe it was it was Richard Nixon. And then the next year
Hmm. Clinton.
they did Clinton, and he was kind of like, yeah, I didn't really want to do Clinton next because I didn't want this to just be an impeachment podcast. But then everyone was like, yeah, what if someone does what you're doing with the Clinton impeachment? Like, won't you be upset? And he was like, yes, I will. Thank you. I'm going to do that.
Thanks for
And
mentioning it
so,
because I do want to do it first.
yeah, like, and so I really like him. He also did Tupac Shakur's trial for Slow Burn, and it's just like moments in history that like kind of get a little bit of a different take. He's also done like David Duke, who was the leader of the KKK.
Mm.
And then I believe he also most recently did Clarence Thomas, and
Oh.
his like fight to become Supreme Court justice, and like his background and kind of what turned Clarence Thomas into Clarence Thomas.
Mm.
Um, because he like he
Infuriating or interesting?
I mean, it was infuriating and interesting because like
Hmm.
he was someone who like I believe I cannot remember quite right. Apologies for my problematic brain, but I believe he like worked for the ACLU at one point. So like he
Mm.
worked for people's rights. It's just like he started to have like different ideas that didn't quite comply with things and like yeah, which is very interesting. So
I also think like this is maybe me doing too much of a blanket statement, but I also feel like a lot of times politicians start to get influenced by money from backers, and then their positions on things change.
that's very true. And a lot of his stuff was kind of about I mean, it's interesting because you can see where people are coming from.
Hmm.
Like two things can be true. Like Clarence Thomas likely is a very problematic figure who has done reprehensible things, especially if you're looking at most recently and all of the times he took money
Hmm.
from people where he shouldn't have. But also like his you could also say like, okay, yes, but like racism can still happen to him. It's kind of like the
Yes.
belief that like those things two things can be true. You can be
Yeah.
wrong and you can be looked down upon or villainized to the
Hmm.
nth degree because you are black. um
Yeah,
so
he definitely, I mean, I don't think that either of us were trying to like
no no
minimize
no
any kind of struggle that he
no
likely had, because this is an old person. It's not like he is young, and he went through, I'm not saying that this the time that we are in is less racist. I'm just saying
but
that it's less outwardly racist
yeah,
at times. So,
yes, and like he went through a lot of that stuff and a lot of times like we also have to remember that like people grew up in a certain thing. So like you and I believe
mhm,
in using the term black, but there are many uh older people who are black who are like, I am an African American and I do not see color because that's what they were
mhm.
raised with as the right way to think. And so it's like, well, I'm not going to tell someone who grew up with their own perspective that they are wrong because
Sure.
that's none of my business. Like I'm there to
Right.
support and help, but I'm not there to criticize. So
Hmm.
but I just think that I thought the person who did it was very interesting. I will say the Tupac season they brought in a different show host because they did bring in a black person to do that, and so that was really
Okay.
interesting because he brought in his own like perspective and everything, and I enjoyed that as well. So you guys should go listen to some history podcasts because I listen to them and then I forget all the facts obviously, so it's like I think he worked for the ACLU, I don't remember. Like I'm terrible with history.
You know what? I think that's just a call to everyone to just go get the information themselves.
Yes,
That
go
that's
listen. Laura and I are doing documentary corner. Hannah via podcast and Laura via
I'm watching
nature
Nat Geo.
channels. Yeah. We're in our nonfiction era. It's about to be November, nonfiction November, guys. That's why we
Are you
told you
doing
this.
nonfiction November?
I might try to read a book, but I never do. I'm so bad at themed months. I'm always like, yeah, I'll
I'm really
totally do a
bad at
themed
themes
month.
too, where I'm like, oh, I should do this or that, and then I try it, and then for some reason, when you know that there's a theme, you immediately don't want to do that anymore, and you're like, I need to mood read anything but this.
Also, I think it's rude to have girls who read fiction 11 months out of the year do an entire month dedicated to nonfiction. My brain doesn't work that way, and I have not trained it to. Like,
And here's the thing, like, I think sometimes people try a little too hard to
mhm.
read nonfiction, and it's just like, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Let's not be trying to force people into reading stuff that they're just not interested in. Read what you like.
That's the thing. It's like I feel like read what you like, and if you want to read nonfiction, great. But like, don't go all out and read like five nonfiction books in a row if you've never read a nonfiction book. It's like when my therapist was talking to me and she was like, I want you to meditate for 1 minute and then 2 minutes and then build up from there, Hannah,
Hmm.
because your brain is a muscle and it needs workouts too.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, that's just like, I know I had a piano teacher that had told me years ago when I was like complaining about not wanting to practice. She
mhm.
said, start out just doing 5 minutes and then work up to 10 and then do 15 and see how it goes from there. And then it became a lot easier actually to sit down and do it. So if it works for a kid playing the piano, it will work for an adult. But I do think though that sometimes there's just some people just don't want to play the piano. And some people just don't want to read nonfiction. And there's kind of a stigma surrounding books still, where it's like, these are the okay tier of books that you should be reading if you're an adult. And these are not as good. And often fiction, I think, is kind of lumped into the books that adults shouldn't be reading. And it's like, no.
Yeah. Nope. Actually, fiction builds empathy and builds different perspectives, and it is good and valid, and people should read fiction more. So
right. I don't think that people should only have to read The Great Gatsby and nonfiction books if they're over the age of 25.
Shoot, that ruins my November TBR.
Oh, darn it. I apologize. And like, I'm realistic with myself where I know like certain nonfics are just not going to work for me, that I just probably won't read them. So
Laura will read any Mary Roach book you throw at her. She will read
I love
any
those.
one of them. You can't
love
expect her to
science
read a
nonfic.
history nonfiction. She's not going to do it.
I have several actually that I've bought, and I've been like, oh, I want to know more about this topic, when I need to be realistic with myself and just watch a documentary, because
just
I'm not going to read the book.
Download some Slow Burn. It's episodic, it is quick, and it just
Maybe
like washes right over you. Or 1 year where you just get random topics about like, hey, everyone in 1955 was buying a coonskin hat because of Davy Crockett.
That's
knew?
Amazing.
Right? It's perfect. That's all I wanted to know. And then it like disappeared. It's so funny. So yeah, that's just random stuff that you should know.
And of course, like the ugliest hat to ever have. Like, ew.
That's because it was like Walt Disney came out with the Davy Crockett special or something. So everyone
there's that cartoon.
became obsessed with it. So
Davy Crockett. I know.
Of course you do. Thank you, Laura. All right. Among Thieves. Should we get into the
Yes, let's finally talk about the reason we are here. Among
Laura
Thieves.
And I specifically said, let's start early so Hannah can just go to bed. And then we spent an hour going on deep dives. No, that's okay.
Hannah's tired from her shots. She got vaccinated, not with an oral vaccine.
I woke up as someone with a drinking problem. I have not had this problem in a very long time. I woke up at my alarm. I had to drink 2 cups of water and then go back to sleep while my body rehydrated itself for a little bit. And I have not had.
Do you not drink water when you wake up right away?
No, I'm usually good to go because I drink so much water throughout the day. But like, no, I had to drink enough water and then go back to bed so it would rehydrate my body. So like sometimes I will drink water when I'm getting out of bed, but specifically I was like, no, I have to go back to sleep because my body can't handle being awake right now. So that, and I used to have that happen to me when I had hangovers. So it's a fun experience to wake up to. But yeah, so
I feel like I generally like I drink a bottle of water before I go to bed. And then I usually wake up in the morning, honestly, because I have to pee. And then after I like go to the bathroom and everything, I'm just like, I have to take my medicine, and I usually drink a full bottle of water when I take my medicine, just because you're supposed to drink a lot of water with that. So I've kind of gotten used to it now, where it's like I almost am really thirsty in the morning too, because I've conditioned myself to know like, oh, you have to drink water to take your meds. So
might as well drink a bottle.
Drink a whole bottle. Now you're really thirsty.
No, I usually do not drink a whole bottle of water when I wake up from bed, Laura. I think that's just a you thing.
But I don't think it's just a me thing, because I think that my mom and sister, they also drink water when they wake up in the morning too. So I thought maybe just people were thirsty in the morning.
No, I usually wait until I like get into work, because I also have to travel 40 minutes. So I like don't want to have to pee during my car ride. That's or fair. Like get to work and immediately have to go to the bathroom. So I think I let myself get a little bit dehydrated, but I was so dehydrated this morning. It was not fun. But anyway, among
thieves.
These people get thirsty too. Thirsty for companionship, and then they betray each other.
Thirsty for betrayal.
Thirsty for betrayal.
There's a lot of that going on.
There's so much. So like, I feel like a huge theme in this book is just like trauma and how you deal with it, because like a lot of these people are coming in with their own like feelings and fears and like a lot of what they've gone through, and
Hmm.
they're just trying to survive afterwards, which I think is an interesting thing to have in books, because I think a lot of times like we almost we almost want to pretend that people who do my mind is gone, but like people who do bad things, we like to see them as purely evil. And sometimes when you have this so many people who like are ready to just turn on one another at a moment's notice, we forget like that's coming from a place of hurt and like
Hmm.
necessary protection. Um and I do think that the author does a wonderful job like dissecting into like what motivates these characters and why they're willing to turn on each other at the drop of a hat.
I mean, it's definitely a world where everyone is morally gray. Like even the bad guys, there's reasons to understand why they're doing the things they're doing. I mean, maybe
I mean,
not some of them.
except for yeah, except maybe not the one who wanted to murder his son and
Murder's
like throw
son.
him on the steps.
Well, I mean, we get a
Um,
reason, but it's a really
it's not a
bad
very
one.
good one.
He's not as gray. He's definitely not in the morally gray area. But I think of the main cast of characters, the ones that we're kind of told are supposed to be the quote unquote bad guys or are seen as the quote unquote bad guys, they're definitely way more gray. And I really appreciate that there's a lot of good within them, even though they're doing some crappy things and they've had really crappy situations happen to them. There's still a lot of motivation to either help other people or to help out the world in general.
Hmm. Well, and like even with the Raya character, like she's come through a lot, and we see her dealing and struggling with it, and like I think it's also a good teaching moment that like who you are isn't who you're going to be forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's been through a lot. She's obviously processing trauma. Like her dad was terrible. He put her through so much. And then she has this moment where someone like points out that she's pretty heartless. And she's like, am I actually heartless? Like, what am I doing? And she has this like kind of come to Jesus moment where she's like, well, I don't want to be that. Like, I thought I was doing this for this reason, but it doesn't work for me. So I'm going to change. And she does like slowly change, where she's still like fundamentally her, but like her actions kind of take a turn and she decides to go a different way and start trusting people a little bit more and like live for other people and not only live to survive.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll maybe talk a little more about Raya, but I think for me, I see even more so from the beginning, a almost denial of from Raya of like caring about other people when like kind of her main motivation was to destroy this quill. So because she knew about its uses, and that to me is like Raya wants to be like, oh, I don't care about anyone. I just care about myself outwardly, but then is very much someone who cares about
But then she's best friends with the
humanity,
prince.
humanity in general, like,
Yeah, and I
and
think she
wanting to help these people who are in a situation where they can't help themselves.
well, and it's also like I guess that's a really it's a really good point you bring up, because I think Raya cares about people who are struggling. Anyone in the protected class, she's like, no, I don't really give a shit about you guys. You guys are fine, and you guys are also kind of evil, and I don't like you. And so then you have like this woman coming in and she's like, you're heartless. And Raya's like, I don't think I'm heartless. Am I heartless because I'm a murderer? And it's like, well, actually, you just kind of murder like people in a certain class, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe everyone else isn't seeing like how great you are for other
Yeah.
people, that you actually care about other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another theme in this book that is maybe more obvious is just the questioning of who is human and who is not,
Mm-hmm.
because the characters themselves are questioning if the adepts are human. And as we learn more about them and the characters become more accepting, we get to see that, oh, they're not referred to as its anymore and they're referred to as actually being people. And there's a little more care placed when even talking about adepts.
I do like that theme as a whole, because like the adepts are really like MJ Kuhn really put us through the ringer with these
Hmm.
characters where like to learn that someone had their entire personality and everything drained out of them for purposes of like helping others or being like of
Well,
assistance to
to be a
others. Yeah.
servant.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak. And so people like kind of slowly coming to the realization that these people are in fact people. And I do think her use of language is very effective with that, with starting
Hmm.
as it's and then getting uncomfortable when they realize like others are not part of that class, and then slowly like gaining acceptance. Like it kind of, I mean, it sucks, but like it also teaches you that like in this world where this is treated as a true to form, no questions asked, this is how the world is, like it makes sense why these people think the way they do, but
Hmm.
it's very nice to kind of see them move away from that.
Yeah, the change in the characters I think is nice because it kind of shows that there's room for growth and maybe more sympathy and empathy that can be
Mhm.
directed towards these people who are clearly suffering if they're unable to
Mhm.
control sections of their lives.
Yeah.
So not being able to have free will is a huge problem. And I I'm kind of excited for the next book to see where this goes because some of the characters think that they've solved the problem and they haven't.
Hmm. Yeah. What did you think about the fact that like Callum Clem actually thought he would be able to be worthy of this power?
Well, I think I said in the last episode, I'm still kind of questioning Callum Clem. Like maybe there's something going on here that I missed. I'm typically not able to pick up on these things that well. I'm often guessing them wrong, but I kind of feel like maybe there's some adept powers here or something going on, something more sinister that we're not aware of because Clem doesn't seem like the type that would just, I don't know, take a risk like that without knowing that he has the ability, if that makes sense.
It was a very weird place to end it because I
Yeah.
was sitting there like, why would you think that you
And maybe we don't know about enough about this character yet, but I guess I just got the vibes from what we did know that
right?
maybe because everyone talks about like, oh yeah, he plans these things out and he probably already knows about this and he probably already heard about that. So I kind of assume like he's got to know more than we're being told because why would he just assume he's not dumb?
I know. It was very weird, but it also like I think you're right that there almost has to be some adept abilities going on because it doesn't make sense that he would be like, oh, this one person couldn't do it. And like that leads me to one of my favorite moments of this book is finding out that the person who typically controls all the other adepts has to be adept themselves.
Hmm.
And that just, I mean, it just kind of goes to the show that like power corrupts, or like in a
Yeah.
society where certain people are seen as less than, you're always trying to get out of the circle of less than, but you're just
Hmm.
moving into, you're not looking,
You're not
I'm
trying to
like,
help them.
you're not looking for liberation, you're looking to be a part of it. And not everyone, but specifically like this character who they're fighting against, the guild master, like he's not looking.
You talked about it in like a totally different scenario context, but you had mentioned like someone closing a door behind them
Hmm.
as
Yes.
a example, and I have used this for several things because it just I think works so well for many scenarios where somebody gets out of a situation and they close the door behind them and forget all about what happened on the other
Hmm.
side of the door.
Yep. And they just want to pretend that they were never part of that, because to be
Hmm.
on that side of the door is to be less than or terrible or many things that they don't want attached to them. And it's a pretty bleak thing, and it's real. Like it happens with
Hmm.
lots of people in marginalized communities. And like it's still showing that the society as a whole is the evilness. Like the people around them are evil,
Hmm.
but there is like this one person who is part of it who like decided to be part of the problem and not the solution, and
Right.
that's pretty difficult. So
Absolutely. What did you think of some of the characters, our main characters that we got their POVs?
I mean, I loved Raya.
I
Um,
also loved Raya. I don't know how you couldn't love Raya,
right.
honestly. And I feel like it's pretty this is gonna sound stupid, but I feel like it's pretty basic to be like, Raya's my
Mhm.
favorite character. But she is. She's so much fun and she's actually really funny too. Like all
Yeah.
of her deflections to try and like direct the people away from her, like don't pay
Mhm.
attention to what I'm doing, are hilarious to me.
I know. I also love that like she's someone who has like scars, she has battle scars. But like I always like it when someone isn't sitting there being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so ugly. I'm so disgusting." Like
Hmm.
Raya's kind of like, "This is just what I look like. I don't know why
Yeah.
anyone would ever have a problem with it. This is who I am."
It's honestly hardly mentioned beyond like
Right.
Evelyn being like, what are all those scars from this terrible person? Like,
Okay, Evelyn, calm down.
yeah.
Uh yeah, I just really liked her a lot. I think she's a very effective like main POV person.
Hmm.
We learn a lot through her. And I just like that she's looking out for herself, but she also does care about others and she sees
Yeah.
their flaws and she does try to fix it. And that's very nice.
And
And
she's
I like
also a
that
badass, and it's just
she's
kind
like
of
Callum Clem's right hand person. And they're like, he hates her like so much because he doesn't want one. And she still made herself so helpful that they couldn't do anything about it. So
I also kind of wondered like what does Callum Clem bring to the table? Like I I don't get it. I'm trying to figure out like what are his skills at this point. That's why I'm kind of thinking there's got to be some adept
I mean, he was able to
powers.
like get them to the quill and get them into the fighting ring and get them all these different things. But I do feel like we haven't spent enough time with him
Hmm.
to like figure out what's actually going on with him.
How'd you feel about Nash?
I felt like Nash was unfortunately the most boring character of all of them. Um, I
Agreed. Oh,
yeah,
we needed more from Nash, and it was kind of hard to connect with the character, I felt like, because it was just like, what was it that Nash did again?
right. It
I
just felt like
I definitely
she
forgot at times.
like Evelyn thinks she's all about I think that was kind of how I described it in the last one. I was like Evelyn thinks she's all about honor, but Nash is actually what honor is supposed to be, which is like I believe in staying with the people who are there to help me. I'm here to make an agreement. I'm not going to go beyond my agreement, but like I will do what I or like not even she does go beyond her agreements in time.
Yeah.
So like she just seems like she's actually what the stoic honorable character is. So I think the most
Mhm.
effective thing she does is she's a foil to Evelyn's character because like
Yeah.
Evelyn thinks she is this person of like I am
Evelyn thinks
strong.
she is the moral high ground.
Yeah, but like Nash is definitely the moral high ground because Nash is like
Hmm.
I know that the world is a messy place and that's how it is.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know what else I can say about that, but this is what we're doing, guys.
Hmm.
And so I really think Nash is an effective person for that person because like we needed someone there who was actually honorable and cared about
Right.
others. But I also don't care that much about what Nash
Yeah.
has going on. Like,
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I guess I don't hate her. I don't hate the character by any means, but it's just kind of like don't feel that attached to her. And it's just like,
yeah.
what did she do?
Who is
She
she?
was
But
Ivan's girlfriend.
she was Ivan's girlfriend.
Wants to be Ivan's girlfore.
And Ivan is sitting there like, I know you want to be my girlfriend, but
Hmm. I know I'm very petty.
my brother might die. So
I'm
like,
sorry, but I have a brother in prison. So
yes, I can't do this right now. I am going to turn on you. That is what
this
I will do.
is regretfully not going to work out well for you. Ivan,
Uh,
actually, I think was my second favorite character.
I really liked Ivan too. I thought he was the second best. I also thought like his motivations made the most sense. It's like, well, his
Yeah.
brother's trying to lead a revolution and then he got captured and he like wants to save his brother. And he's someone who's like, my brother was an important leader. Like he is probably worth more to this world than I am. And like that's not
Hmm.
true, but that's probably how he feels.
I get
Uh
that vibe as well. I kind of felt like the backstory with Ivan was the most interesting.
yeah. Because I wasn't
And
expecting like a revolutionary like
mhm.
person to show up.
And I kind of appreciate that really self-sacrificing feel that we get from
Hmm.
Ivan, where it's just like he's on a mission to help a greater group than himself. And that's definitely the case here. It's definitely, I feel like in this situation, it's definitely not something like selfish motivations at all.
Right.
It's for the greater whole group.
And he also has like the most interesting, like, quote unquote powers where he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I just make people pretty and like being pretty. And
The
I like,
disguises and everything, it's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I really appreciated that too.
He also seems to be the one who kind of gets it the most. Like, Raya is very smart and calculating, but Raya doesn't seem to understand that she's incredibly vulnerable around Callum Clem.
Hmm.
Like, she's kind of like, well, I'm powerful. I can take care of myself. And Ivan's kind of the one who's like, oh my gosh, Nash is going to get us caught. She can't keep her mouth shut. Oh my gosh, Raya's a hothead. This is happening.
Well,
Like,
Ivan is definitely the most like flexible in situations that are tense, and you can't always go exactly according to plan, especially in these situations where your people you're working with aren't going to go by the
right,
book. So I kind of felt like Ivan was maybe the best in a heist situation because he's so flexible and able to kind of work with what he's got.
right. It's very interesting. I definitely like him so much. I really liked Ivan's character. I he also has the best experience with the different people. Like, he has
Hmm.
good back and forth with Raya. He
Oh
has
yeah, his rapport with all the other characters is really good.
It's really effective. So, um,
Tristan to me was
sad
kind
boy.
of yeah, kind of the sad boy that is in love with Raya and obviously is unable to take a hint
Yeah,
because there were so many times when it's mentioned like, oh, he's got a crush on her. He looked at her longingly. It's like, just stop. She's not interested.
she's not gonna go for this. I'm so sorry, but no thank you is what she says. Okay. He's so interesting because, like, I just feel like Tristan, his motivations make sense on paper,
Hmm.
but then when I have to interact with him, I'm like, your motivations don't make sense because I don't think I like you very much.
You're in a situation where you're like, I understand why your dad wanted to do.
I don't understand why his dad wanted to murder him. No. But, like, it's one of those things where I kept having to remind myself, like, right, your dad wanted to try to kill you, so you're on
Yeah.
the run. Right. That's why you're doing these things. That's why
Mhm.
you're a little bit insufferable.
Yeah. And
And,
when
like,
it's like, you're not very smart, are you? And you have to remind yourself, like, okay, this is a young boy who's terrified in all situations.
and he was a
Okay.
prince up until a couple of months ago,
Hmm.
so he isn't
He's
that smart.
obviously going to trust people who he shouldn't.
Well, and then, like, he just does so many stupid, stupid things. And it's like,
Hmm.
why are you fawning over a woman who's never going to want to be with you? Why are you doing these things, Tristan? Just what? You're not very pretty. And, well, you're very pretty, it sounds like, and you're not very
Hmm.
bright. But also, like, I love Kuhn's writing because she has such a way of mocking Tristan that I'm like, yeah, I'm kind
Yes.
of on the person's side where they at one point they called him like the Prince of Soaps and Suds or
Yeah.
whatever. And I was like,
Yeah. The Prince of
that's
Soaps.
that's funny. Like, that's funny. I do want him to be mocked about that. If he's like
Hmm.
hanging out with grubby people and he's always just clean and like
Hmm.
not a speck of dirt on him, like, what did you expect, Tristan? And I think it always bothers me when the one thing that a person brings to the group is like a bargaining chip. I think that that's a hard place to
Yeah.
be, uh, canonically in the book. So it's probably not
Hmm.
always Tristan's fault, but isn't it sometimes Tristan's fault?
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you've said because Tristan is he is the bargaining chip.
Yeah.
And therefore his usefulness in the crew is kind of non-existent when you're going into a heist and no one could figure out why he was involved. Only Clem knew his usefulness and it's just he's not that fun when you have to think about it from those perspectives.
And I just wish you didn't have such a big crush on Raya. Like,
I I know that is too much obviously because Evelyn and Raya are hashtag
obviously Endgame. Like,
Avengers Endgame.
they're Avengers Endgame. They just are. What did you think about Evelyn?
I did not like Evelyn. This is not the
Yeah.
character. I've mentioned this before. This is not the character, the type of character that I like. I do not like the character that thinks they have the moral high ground and is better than everybody else and is trying to get people to follow the rules in a situation where the rules cannot be followed. And I just felt like there was a lot of like I don't, I don't know if like being blind to what they're doing going
Hmm.
on with Evelyn, where it was like, I'm totally good and you're bad towards Raya, that I was very annoyed with because Evelyn does a lot of the same things and
Right.
just thinks that her actions are more justifiable because she's doing them in the name of the crown. And that's not true, really.
Right. I very much agree. I thought Evelyn was a rough hang. And I do think like I think it's an interesting character to put in the mix, whether or not you like her. Because it is someone who has to unlearn the like
Mhm.
it's like you're learning white supremacy isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting to watch on the page, but you're also sitting there being like, ugh, but why didn't you know
And
that
you're
before?
frustrated.
Right. It's just stupid and frustrating and yeah, so I don't always have fun with Evelyn.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the POV that I enjoyed the least, honestly, because even like kind of reading her POV, I was just like, really the hostility that we have towards some of the other characters and the kind of attitude like I'm better than this. I'm only here so I can get Raya's head. It just kind of bothered me, and it's like, okay, so you have a problem with all of them for what they're doing, but you are here for nefarious reasons as well.
Right. And she always is sitting there like, oh my gosh, you can't trust anyone. And it's like, well, you're going to turn all these people in.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, you can't trust anyone because they can't trust you, Evelyn.
And when she's like, at least I don't have daddy issues, it's like, wait,
You have the
you
most daddy
definitely
issues.
do. I mean, Raya probably has more, but
That's
Evelyn's
fair.
number two. No, Evelyn's number
Well,
three. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
I don't know. Hers might be worse than Tristan because at least Tristan's dad was just purely evil. Like Evelyn hasn't
Maybe.
unlearned that her dad is an asshole.
Yeah, I guess she hasn't recognized the problem yet, so maybe she's number
Yeah,
two.
she might be number two until she recognizes her problem. And
Oh
then
my.
murderous daddy goes to number two, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting. And I wish we had more of like Nash's backstory because I think that might
Hmm.
make us like her more. And Evelyn, because I think you and I both enjoy the backstories to understand the motivations.
Yes.
And then,
It's necessary because look at the
yeah.
characters that we are like, these are our favorites. It's the ones where we got more backstory
So I do
because we
think
have more info on Raya and Ivan and Tristan than we do on the other characters. So we're like, oh, those
exactly.
are the ones we like the most.
Exactly. So I do feel like sometimes we do need more backstories. I hope we get that in the next book with like more Nash and I guess a little bit more. But like Evelyn, we do get her backstory. It just kind of sucks. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
yes, you were a cop and now you're not anymore.
Yeah.
And you think being a cop is amazing and that is
Hmm.
your job. Like, good for you, I guess.
Yeah.
Go off, queen.
Fun.
So, it's interesting. But
Any
yeah.
predictions for thick ass thieves?
The chaos thieves. I do think that we're gonna find out Clem has some kind of power because that's
Yeah.
like the only
I
way that makes sense. I wonder, like,
I would really expect that, but again, I'm often wrong.
I'm expecting that Nash gets a little bit better motivation because if she finds out that like she could potentially be reunited with her sister, I could see that being a pretty foundational motivation for her. Um,
I definitely think there's going to be, because this is a duology, so there's definitely going to be some kind of reveal of someone, one of the adept servants being Nash's sister.
yes. And I think that that's a good motivation for her because right now she doesn't really have one. So, like, finding out that you could
Hmm.
be reunited with her sister after it sounds like she doesn't really have any family left.
Hmm.
And maybe going through the grief of knowing that you didn't step up for your sister because you just thought that that was
Yep.
normal. Um, I could see that very much happening. Ivan's I hope Ivan's brother gets released and he falls in love with Raya, so Raya doesn't have to be with
I feel
Evelyn.
like
I
Raya
know.
is going to end up with Evelyn, unfortunately.
I know, but maybe Ivan's brother will fall in love with Tristan and then I'll get over it.
I
I just
just
love Laura.
sometimes I don't because one of
Well,
the
yeah.
people in love is too much.
It's just she's a lot, guys. She's a lot. Um, but yeah. Any predictions on your end?
Yeah, the adept reveal gonna happen. I want to say that Tristan is gonna play a bigger role in this too,
Mm,
and that there's gonna be maybe a wider scale political. thing going on. Maybe a bigger group of people is involved now rather than just this small few groups of heisting people, I guess.
A
I
few
kind of
heisters.
a few heisters.
It's
I
gonna be
think
all the heisters. A
I
few
mean, I think
missing
that
girls.
we've definitely got like the guildmaster involved now.
Yes.
So there's going to be all the people within the island. It's definitely a fight for humanity at this point
Mm-hmm.
and to how to control humanity. And so I think we've kind of in this book set up a war.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of predict that happening, that there's going to be a lot of different sides, probably some new characters introduced, and a lot of action, I would assume.
A lot
Evelyn
of
and
action,
Raya,
Jackson.
unfortunately, they're Avengers Endgame. I'm not going to go into detail on that. I just don't
We
like
just
it
know.
very much. I
I get
also would be interested to see a little more about Raya's background and her abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah,
because,
I'm
I
interested
mean,
to see
we get a
that.
lot of the trauma and the torture of that, and that is sad. But I would be interested to understand more about her abilities and if this is something like other people can do without like cannibalism.
Fair enough. Yeah, I do wonder if we're gonna meet more adepts who were like had the powers from something else, or
Yeah,
yeah,
that could learn it, you know what I mean, rather than
right.
it being consumed.
I also
Um,
wonder if Callum Clem is gonna like kick himself when he finds out Raya has powers, or if he already knows. Because
I
like,
I kind of think he already knows
fair enough.
because if we're on the belief that he is adept, I want to say that he probably sensed it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So, yeah, I think, and Ivan is probably gonna get reunited with his brother.
Yeah,
Hopefully, he gets him out.
that's. I hope so.
I hope there's not like, because I could also see this happening because authors do like to kill off somebody and make it
Mhm.
tragic. So I could also see the brother being dead or dying,
Yeah.
and then Ivan having to step up into that position to
I
lead
could
a group
also
of
even
people.
see Raya dying. Like if she
Ooh,
wanted to really throw us for a loop, it's like, oh, Raya dies. Evelyn picks up the mantle of the butcher, and we're both like, but
oh
why?
no, let's reverse it.
Hannah, don't say it out loud.
Come on.
Sorry. I had to say it. I had to say
I
it.
I could also see that, and that would actually be kind of interesting to have like the main character be killed off.
Mhm.
MJ,
Wow.
we're ready for what you got.
Well, are you guys ready? Because next week, MJ's on the pod.
Woohoo!
She's going to join us to discuss the book and answer all our questions. And it's a great fun time. We had so much fun
Mm-hmm.
with her on it. So make sure you guys are downloading that. And then, y'all, it's like on to some great stuff.
Yeah,
We
we're
are
back in Murderbot.
we're back in the Murderbot Diaries with a kickoff with a Martha Wells interview. Guys,
Martha.
oh gosh, it's so exciting. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for that. And then hopefully by then the SAG-AFTRA strike is done and you get to have our
And then we'll give you a
opinions.
little what.
Yeah, we'll give you a little what action if they finally come to an equal and fair payment.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you guys follow along with our reading schedule because we are making updates to it as we go along. We added an episode here. We did a month of Among Thieves because there
Yes.
are no rules, guys. We told you
It's
this.
no rules November in October and December.
But you know what is kind of a rule that's always a rule is please rate, review, and subscribe because rating,
Yeah.
reviewing, and subscribing is a great way to get our podcast out there. Make sure you're telling your friends about us, just chit-chatting, saying how much you like us.
Word of mouth is huge.
Word of mouth is huge, guys. Make sure you're following us at OWWR Pod on Instagram and on Twitter for as long as it exists, and on
Blue Sky
and Threads
TikTok
and TikTok and all the places.
and
We're just everywhere.
all of them.
Uh-huh.
Go to our
It's a
blog,
hard life.
ourpod.com.
Ourpod.com.
Email us, ourpod.
Ourpod
Get on
at
our Discord.
gmail.com. Get on our Discord. We love our Discord, please. And if you would so like to, please join us over on Patreon.
Yeah.
We just did an October spooky Halloween episode where we reviewed Buddies.
Not as spooky as I thought it was going to be.
No, Laura and I are chickens, so we weren't going to do
I made Hannah watch
actual.
it at like 1 in the afternoon.
And she said, "I'm not going to watch it any later." That is a true story, guys. So, go join us over on Patreon to watch Buddies or review Buddies.
Yeah.
Because it's fun. So,
And thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
we do. Right. Bye.
Bye, friends.